It's incredibly inspiring to hear from people who've not only faced and overcome ME/CFS, but have also dedicated their lives to understanding what truly drives recovery. Today, I am thrilled to chat with the amazing Fiona Montgomery, who brings a unique perspective shaped by her own 12-year journey with this condition. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Raelan Agle, and it is my privilege and honor to share recovery stories from conditions like ME/CFS and Long Covid. We're all learning from each other so we can make better choices for our health, because let's face it, there's no handbook for this journey. I'm especially excited to talk with Fiona. You are going to love her. She is amazing. She's joining us in Glastonbury in England, and she's spent precious years of her youth lying in a darkened room where even things like the glow of the screen of her smartphone were just more than she could handle. And she tried everything from alternative therapies to diet changes and strong medications. But it wasn't until she discovered a particular therapy that she recovered. And when she did, she recovered in just a few months. I am so eager to dive in and help share as many of her helpful nuggets as possible. So let's do this. Fiona, amazing to have you here. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, it's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Raelan.
So like virtually everyone that comes here and I speak with, I know you've had a really rough, tough, long journey with this. So how did this all start for you?
Yeah, it's been a huge journey in my life. It began when I was 25, and that was back in 2003. And I had been experiencing some strange symptoms in my body just for like maybe sort of 6 weeks, 2 months prior to this moment where I came down with a sort of flu virus. And I literally did not get out of bed again, really pretty much for 11 years, 12 years. My body was so sick and it couldn't like recover, basically. And that was the beginning of that journey.
What on earth did you think was happening at 25 when you're young and energetic and healthy, and a flu that just levels you permanently?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. It's terrifying, if I'm honest. Like, I was literally terrified and I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know how long it was going to take for me to recover. You know, once I'd gone beyond the usual maybe 2 to 3 weeks of a flu and I was still just as bad, I started to feel like, oh my God, like, what is this? And where am I going with this? And the doctors at the time were not entirely sure what was happening to me. And so I didn't even have like, you know, sort of some sense of what to expect from them either. They had a few ideas of, they could see I had Epstein-Barr virus. They could see I had adrenal fatigue. They could see I had hypothyroid. But the intensity of the symptoms, they were like, we don't know how long this will take. So yeah, it was very frightening. Yeah.
And they thought that this was all stemming from the Epstein-Barr virus?
Well, that's all they could put it down to.
Okay.
You know, I mean, it was actually a flu virus that had sort of knocked me out in that, you know, actually at the time. But I think then when they did my blood tests and they kind of like, well, why are you not recovering? That's what they found was, okay, there's something else going on that's maybe a bit deeper. And I was in America actually at the time when I got ill. I live in the UK like normally, but I was there. I'd been living there for a year or so. And so, you know, they were great. They did everything they could do to understand it, but they couldn't cure me.
People just didn't know what was going on then, or even now. It sounds like, as with many people, they just said, like, sorry, that we don't really know what's happening. We don't know what to do. We don't know how long it's going to last. Next patient, please. It sounds a little harsh, but we're sent off. Like, what now? So, yeah.
And I was fortunate on one level, you know, that I was living in a sort of community of people who were very alternative and into complementary therapies. And so I had something to try. You know, I tried every therapy you can imagine, but it wasn't, it wasn't going to be a quick fix for sure. But, I was very lucky to have people who were at least trying to help around me. But, with all these things, as I'm sure people who are listening or watching know, it feels very lonely when you're struggling and no one knows what to do to help you, So it's a frightening place.
It's interesting, isn't it, going through that journey of trying all these different things and alternative therapies, and it can be frustrating because thing after thing isn't working, but it can also be a source of hope because at least you've got something. Okay, let's try this new thing. It's a bit of a roller coaster because it's let down, but then, okay, try something new. So in a way, it's a bit of a blessing because it keeps you going until your answers do appear.
So true. It's like, I don't know. I often think, actually, I don't know what I would have done in those years if I hadn't have had those therapies to try, or, I would meet someone who would get in touch with my family and they'd say, oh, we've tried this, maybe give this a try. And just those little threads, as you say, of hope to keep you going. And I would sometimes hear of people who'd had other illnesses that they'd recovered from, and that would also inspire me that, okay, people can recover, so maybe there's a way through. And I think I clung on to that a lot in my most difficult times.
Yeah, understandably. And it's always interesting to hear some of the things. I imagine it's a very long list, but what are some of those initial things that you tried to get well that weren't so helpful for you?
I often say to people, I should probably tell you the things I didn't try, because there's it's literally like, you name it, I tried it. Some of the things, the key things I tried, herbs, homeopathy. I tried diet changes, many different types of diet, fasting, cleansing, enemas, the list went on. I also did lots of different psychotherapeutic things, psychotherapy, even things like shamanic healing. I did a lot with spiritual healing. I really covered pretty much all the bases, I think. And it was actually me trying to heal that brought me to Glastonbury in England, which you may know is a sort of powerful spiritual centre in the world. And all the healers here, I was kind of like, there's got to be someone who can help me. And so I really tried so many ways in to understand what was causing it, whether on the physical level, the emotional level, and the spiritual level. And there's some wonderful things, acupuncture, all these things, they do, I found they did make a difference, but they weren't the thing that actually allowed me to make a full recovery. So, yeah, but they definitely were props along the way, yeah.
And getting hit with something so severe, so young, I can only imagine how devastating that was, and that there would have been times of feeling quite hopeless. And a lot of people listening and watching understandably face those times of just like, I don't know if I can pick myself back up one more time. Like, I'm tired of the struggle. So, what were some of the things for you that got you through those hardest of hard times so that you could keep going?
Such a great question. And it's so true what you say. To be hit that young and in the prime of your life, really, those are the years you're meant to be out there kind of doing your thing, and I was literally in bed with the blindfold on, it's like, it's, and I think what got me through, like what kept giving me hope, I had such a strong belief that there's got to be something like a higher purpose, or, I have a very strong sort of spiritual connection. And I just kept thinking, there's got to be a reason that this is happening. And I really believe there's got to be a way through. And so I think even in those really dark times, where there were times where I just wanted to give up, because it's really hard to keep going when you're up against that much pain and suffering every day, and you don't maybe see light at the end of the tunnel. But there was I think the connection on the inside to like a higher reason, or like if I could ever recover, I think, maybe I could help somebody who's where I am right now. That was a big motivator as well. I think partly because before I got ill, I was actually working as a therapist. So I already had that sort of deep care for other people and, wanting to be able to help wherever I could. So even my journey was like, maybe there's a way I can help others if I can just keep going. So, there were many things that kept my inner flame alive, I guess. And certainly that sense of a higher purpose was probably the main one.
And so thankfully, eventually you did start finding some things that helped significantly. So how did you get onto that path? And what did that look like?
That was, I mean, gosh, grace, honestly. Like, I remember, like, I was at the point, it was 11 years in, and I was at the point where I was like, I have literally tried everything. And I was actually getting worse, if anything, to be honest. And I just was like, I kind of give up. Like, I don't know what else to do. And then this therapy came along. Somebody said, just try this one last thing. It's meant to be amazing, and it was called Mickle therapy. It was something I had tried briefly many years before, which had helped a little, but, it's a long story, but, for various reasons, it wasn't at the time the answer. But they had changed, they'd upgraded, they'd learnt new things. And by the time I then tried again, they had a new therapist who was running it called Claire Caldwell. And she was able to help me very rapidly, actually. It was miraculous to understand what the messages were that my body was sending. And once I was able to interpret them, my recovery was actually very quick. And it was literally a miracle as far as I was concerned. I mean, I went from bedbound, housebound to being able to be out in the world and walking around within just a few weeks. And that was nothing short of a miracle. It was like a kind of second life happening for me, and I never looked back after that. The months I worked with her, I think it was over a year. And I never, ever looked back. It was always forward movement from then. Yeah, so very, very grateful.
What did that feel like to be out walking around after 11 years of just
Oh my God.
like an elephant sitting on you, immobilized? Like, yeah.
I can honestly say, like, pure joy, pure joy. Like, and a kind of almost a child's joy of I would skip down the streets and I would skip singing down the streets because I was just like, I can move, I can dance, oh my God, like, oh my God. I think my neighbors were like, what just happened there? Like, so it was like, yeah, it was incredible. And in the town that I live, where I made my recovery, people still remark on it that have lived here a long time, because that was about, I guess that was like 10 years ago now. So they'll often say, like, do you remember when you were like in a wheelchair and then now, like, and so it's really beautiful that, that it was like a celebration for everybody, to see someone recover from, it was a miracle as far as I was concerned. Yeah.
I have the most amazing visual in my head of you skipping down the street in an adult's body, but with maybe like a 4-year-old's mentality, like, a flower, a squirrel, I'm
literally. It was literally like,
and you're like, I don't care.
Yeah, like literally, I did not care. Like, any sort of like social inhibitions were gone because it was like that. It was like all those things, like even going to a cafe, having a coffee, like, and a piece of cake. It was like, oh my God, just these things that we don't even think of. We just take them for granted. But, when you haven't done any of that for years, it was profound. And I definitely appreciated all those first moments. For many months, many months.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you said, so you're working with Claire Caldwell, and I've interviewed quite a few people who have worked with her and done her program, probably around 15 people. So people listening, watching, if this resonates for you, I'll have them all linked in the video description and you can take a look because it's a lot of pretty amazing transformations. But you said when she started working with you, she was helping you understand, messages from your body or emotions. Explain, how did it start? What was that first week working with her? What did that look like?
I mean, yeah, it's a great question. I mean, the first week, because I was literally bedbound, so I couldn't really move. And at the time, I was so weak, I could barely speak and barely eat. Either I had really severe digestive issues, which meant I had lived on practically no food for years. So that first week with her, I was a bit like, how do I even start to understand these messages? Because there's so many and they're so loud. But we started very small. So we started with just, like how would I like to, which way round in my bed might I want to be sitting? Or, like, is there a favorite food I'd like to be having right now? Like, is there, trying to like tune into what are those like little subtle desires and feelings, and how am I feeling about being stuck in my bed all day, and is there something is there someone I'd like to connect with, or, so it was very, very little at the beginning, because I couldn't just stand up and go and do something else, or, so we started where I was. But, it was actually quite rapid. I remember by the second session, she asked me, because I had terrible stomach pain. It was one of my symptoms. I remember her asking me, like, so what's underneath of that? Like, what's the emotion underneath? And I was like, I feel really lonely, and so we worked with the loneliness, and it actually really very quickly transformed what was happening in my body by working in this very direct way. So instead of what I had been doing, which was going, there's something wrong with my stomach, it's the food that's making it worse, which is what it felt like. We started working with underneath, what's the more subtle emotion contained within it. And actually from that second session, I was able to eat again. It was one of my biggest light bulb moments that ever came. And it was one of the things that got me to keep going with that process with her, was I could see how radical her way of working was. So yeah, it's hard to explain in just a few words, but essentially once you can interpret the emotions that are contained within the symptoms, then the symptoms can start to switch off, and they don't have to speak so loud. And that's really how Claire works.
Was this way of approaching things initially foreign to you? Because I know now you, myself, probably most of the people listening, watching, if they're in this space, have become mind-body experts and can talk to you about emotions and the limbic system and the amygdala and the autonomic nervous system. But for most of us, we didn't start there. And this is a very unusual, foreign way of thinking of things. So how did you first feel about this approach when she introduced it?
Yeah, I mean, I had, like you said, I'd already sort of been very much in that mind-body world. But there was something about this that it's very simple, and it kind of turned a lot of my understanding on its head of how to understand my emotions. And I think it's maybe partly because in this modality, we talk about there being two sources of emotion, one coming from what we call the authentic emotions of the emotional brain, and then other emotions that come from our thoughts and our beliefs. And they feel the same, but when we can identify the root of the emotion and respond to whether it's authentic or thought generated, then it actually makes a difference to how we're listening. And I think that was what turned it around for me with this work, was I got to understand those deeper emotions that were the more authentic ones, that weren't coming from my thoughts. They were coming from my heart, my gut, and that's very much the sort of premise of the work that I did with Claire and that I teach now, is we're looking to go to the very most subtle emotions that are coming from the body intelligence.
I imagine this is a complex thing to go through and a lot of learning around this, but is there an introduction or a high-level way of explaining how someone could determine between authentic emotions and thought-generated emotions?
I mean, one of the most simple ways is, does it come immediately? So with our authentic emotions, because they come from the gut and from the heart, they tend to be immediate. So just as an example, if someone says something that upsets you, you tend to feel it viscerally, as an immediate feeling in often the solar plexus or somewhere like that. And that's what we would call an authentic emotional response. Whereas usually with thought-generated emotions, there's a little delay, because usually when we start to think about something, we might start to get angry, or we might start to feel scared, but it's the thought loops that have kind of introduced the emotion. So that's a very simple way to say it, if that makes some sense.
That makes a lot of sense. All right, so Fiona, you've done a very good job of summing up 11 years very, very quickly. But there was a lot that was going on there. So even just what was your average day or week or month like? How are you feeling? What sorts of symptoms were you having through all of this?
I mean, it varied over, because 11 years, of course, is a long time. I would say the sort of typical picture was a lot of muscle pain, weakness in the muscles. I would get insomnia. I was often awake all night for periods of time. Very sensitive eyes and ears, so I couldn't take light or sound, which meant I couldn't watch TV, I couldn't read, I couldn't, there were lots of things that it limited. And also just a lot of digestive issues, a lot of stomach pain. So yeah, headaches. It was very, very, very hard to keep going with all of that. And I pretty much laid in bed all the time. Sometimes I would be well enough to be put in a wheelchair and taken out, but there were often long periods of time where I didn't. And so, yeah, it varied over those years, but that was the kind of general themes.
Yeah, I know we're learning that it doesn't help to put too much of focus onto symptoms or too much get involved in the comparison game too much. But that being said, when people are going through this, you want to hear, like, is this something similar that I went through, and it's relatable. And
I think it's important that people know as well, because on the sort of mental health side, I had severe anxiety, and OCD, and it was really strong. And I think when people have been ill for a long time, that's what can happen. They become more and more afraid. And that's a really lonely place to be, with just what's happening inside your own mind and your own body in this context as well. So it's just really, I think it's nice for people to know that it's possible to come out of there and come back to some sense of normality. I know that for me was one of the things that always kept me going, was to know that it was possible to come back to normal. Yeah.
Yeah, when something's been going on for so long, it can start to be easy to start to feel like it's never going to change. And this is the way things are always going to be. It just starts to be all that you can remember. And it's going to be really challenging in that moment to zoom out and think, like, this might just be one chapter, one season, one phase of my life that I'll look back on at some point. It can feel almost impossible, but as they say, the only constant in life is change, and things can and do change, and there's so much information and so much resources out there. So I hope that people listening and watching, if you're feeling stuck, that's okay. We've all felt stuck. You don't have to feel optimistic and like, I will get past this every minute of the day, but just keep finding getting, we say be resilient, like it's just something you snap on, but resilience is getting support, finding information, finding sources of hope, listening, watching to recovery stories. Just keep doing whatever you have to do to keep pulling yourself out of those places so that you can keep going, because you didn't come this far only to come this far, and it is possible to get past this.
Absolutely. And that's a message I would so want to share with the viewers is, there was a time where I literally was bedbound, housebound, didn't see any way out. And now I'm like, I'm completely well, getting to live the life that I always wanted to be able to live. And it is possible, it's possible to take those steps out of any situation that you might be in. And there's just something for me that feels really precious about people knowing that there is a way out. Yeah.
I always think I wish there was a way for me now to go back and visit me then all those years and just give myself a hug every once in a while. I'd be like, you've got this. You're going to get through this. I know this sucks. It is horrible. You're not the only one on the planet going through this. Be kind to yourself. Be patient. You will get there. Since we can't do that, I always want to reach through the camera, to the people watching and just be like, I want to give a hug to you. Like, you've got this. I know it sucks, but you're not alone. Yeah. And you will get there.
Yeah, 100%.
When you think back on your journey of all those years, especially starting out so young, what are some of those key things you would have wanted yourself to know, or that you would want people that are in this right now to know?
Gosh. Yeah. Wow. I mean, that's such a good question. I think I'd have wanted myself to know, like, to as much as possible, to trust the process, to trust my body, that whatever's going on, it's like my body's just trying to communicate. our bodies are always trying to communicate with us. And maybe within that, something about allowing myself to give space to just be with that, to listen to that, and if there are people around me who I can ask for support from, if there's friends who are like friends who can really understand some challenges I might be going through or that I've been through when I was younger, just to really reach out and ask for all the help I can get. Because for me, I think support is so important as we go through these times. So, but I'd also say, as much as you can, try and sprinkle bits of joy into your life, even when you're not feeling well. And like see if you can just bring some lightness in different ways every day, to feed your spirit as you journey. Because I think joy and even if it's just little things is such
so important. Very well said. And Fiona, like many people, so now this is shifted the trajectory of your life, and you are now very passionate about reaching out to other people and helping other people. So where are you now? What does life look like now? Tell us about the work you're doing, the support you have for people now.
So my life now is really well, which is amazing. It's still amazing to me. So I have a very vibrant life. I'm very blessed to live in a town with a wonderful community. There's a lot of different activities and dance and singing and all kinds of things that go on here, which I love. My life looks like my work is all about helping people recover from ME, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, these kinds of conditions. And so I do work one-to-one online. I do some in person. And I also run workshops and online courses. So most of the work I do is either working to help people recover or to help people who are, maybe their life is a bit of a struggle in some way emotionally. And so I'm helping them to work with emotional balance. So yeah, it's very much my life's purpose. And as you said, I'm very passionate about helping people. Yeah. Very blessed I'm doing.
Yes. How could you not be, having been what you've been through and knowing, what it's like to be there and that it is possible to get past it? What I would have given to have a Fiona in my life when I was going through this, it would have just been, I can't even, it feels like such a lonely, overwhelming journey for so many of us. And it's so great that there's so much support out there now. So, it makes me so happy that you're out there for people in the world. I bet you there is so much gratitude with the people you're working with. And of course, everything for people listening, watching, Fiona's website, everything you need to know to learn more about her, get in touch with her, will all be there. So definitely, please just take a moment, do yourself a favor and check it out and see what's there, because she's an incredible person, a wealth of information. She truly gets it. She's been there. And just, yeah, I think if there's a way to have a bit more Fiona in your life, I would definitely encourage it. Is it too late for me? I'll still take some more Fiona, man. Absolutely amazing. Well, thank you so much, Fiona. Incredible having you here. I'm going to link on the screen. I actually did interview Claire Caldwell, the creator of the Mind Body Reconnect program. She's a wonderful woman, and she talks about, why our brains make us sick and some of the 3 C's, different things, approaches to recovery. So a lot of great insights there. But yeah, thank you for being here. It's been absolutely wonderful. Yeah.
Raelan.
And thanks to everyone watching and listening. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts and hoping to see you in the next video linked with Claire Caldwell. And also check out Fiona's website. Don't forget to do that. Thanks, everyone.